Hi, Mikhail. We are about to start in 1 minute, right?
Hello, Malika. Yes, we will begin in 1 minute and the recording will commence shortly. Thank you.
Okay. You will bring the participant to the room from waiting room, correct?
Yeah, the participants are here. So participants, please keep your video and audio off while we begin this event. Thank you.
Okay. Mikhail, we start now, right?
Yes, please go for it. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, our distinguished participant, speaker, and presenter. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Malika, and I'm your host today, speaking from Geneva. I'm the Field Project Coordinator, Ecosystem-Based Disaster Risk Reduction and Disaster and Conflict Branch, UNEP. As part of European Commission-supported project on upscaling community resilience through ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, UNEP is promoting large-scale implementation of Eco-DRR through different models. This model include mainstreaming through capacity building and policy advocacy, leveraging investment in existing large-scale development program, and community-based model applied across the landscape. UNEP is implementing the partnership with the Partner for Resilience Consortium. In this webinar, our partner will be sharing the experience from upscaling Eco-DRR across 5 countries. We also have a presentation from University of Massachusetts, who did cost-benefit analysis of the Eco-DRR project. Before starting this event, we would like to inform you that this webinar is being recorded and live streamed on the YouTube channel of Partnership for Environment and Disaster Risk Reduction, PEDRR. We require consent from all speaker and presenter. If you see the consent button and agree, please click it. Otherwise, you might be sent out of the Zoom. We are also kindly requesting the participants to always mute their audio and video. Thank you. This webinar has 3 sessions. The first session is the welcoming remark from the host, UNEP and Partner for Resilience, and from the European Commission. The second session is the presentation of case study from 5 countries by Partner for Resilience. Subsequently, the result of cost and benefit analysis by University of Massachusetts, and the knowledge and communication product from UNEP. It is ended by closing by UNEP. Without further ado, let's start the opening season by welcoming Cecilia Ipira, the head of Disaster and Conflict Branch, UNEP. Cecilia, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I assume you can still hear me clearly as we tested before.
Yes.
Thank you. A warm welcome to all of you. I'm joining you from Nairobi. It's nice and sunny here, and I hope you're all in good weather. I'm really pleased to be in this webinar. The United Nations General Assembly designated the 13th of October, today, as the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction to promote a global culture of disaster risk reduction. We are here to acknowledge how people and communities around the world are rising to face the challenges resulting from exposure to disasters, but also finding solutions to reduce disaster risks and losses in lives and livelihoods. In the last decade, the role of ecosystems in disaster risk reduction, in short, Eco-DRR, has received increased global attention. Sustainable ecosystem management of DRR, or nature-based solutions, are now recognized as a priority measure in the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, to which UNEP is a signatory, but also an active member. The fifth session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, UNEP, which was held earlier this year in Nairobi, adopted a multilateral agreed definition of nature-based solutions, recognizing the role they play in the global response to climate change and its impact. UNEP 5 also passed a resolution on nature-based solutions for supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. In essence, the Eco-DRR approaches recognize that ecosystems can provide disaster risk reduction services, which contribute to building local resilience to disasters and climate change. The main aim of UNEP's Eco-DRR project, that you'll be hearing from at a later stage, is to develop different models for demonstrating large-scale implementation of Eco-DRR, which advance implementation of the Sendai Framework and the Sustainable Development Agenda. Through this website, we are pleased to share with you the encouraging results of the field projects on community-based upscaling models of Eco-DRR, implemented by UNEP's project partner, the Partnership for Resilience, in short PFR, across different landscapes in 5 countries across Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. We are glad to have our PEDRR, that's short for Partnership for Environment and Disaster Risk Reduction, PEDRR. We are glad to have our PEDRR network member, the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, US, conducting a cost-benefit analysis of our Eco-DRR models to fill the knowledge gaps on estimated economic net benefits of using the Eco-DRR approaches. This would particularly be useful, we believe, for policymakers, but also for financing partners to guide the investments on Eco-DRR and on nature-based solutions in their development programs, and partnerships focused on helping communities build resilience against climate and disaster risks. Please allow me to take this opportunity to also convey our appreciation as UNEP to the Directorate General of International Partnership, DG-INTPA, the European Commission, for their generous support to the project and indeed of their continued support to UNEP's work on promoting and upscaling Eco-DRR since 2013. Lastly, we are also pleased to share the knowledge products that we have co-generated with PFR. These materials and documents present the upscaling models, the links with larger national programs, the estimated economic net benefits, the lessons learned, but also the recommendations. We hope these could be used as practical examples and references in upscaling of similar initiatives. I very much look forward to hearing your experiences and your thoughts and how we can really upscale Eco-DRR models for disaster risk reduction in the course of this webinar. Thank you very much, and a warm welcome again to all of you.
Thank you, Cecilia. The next remark will be delivered by Partner for Resilience, represented by Jane Medwick, the Chief Executive Officer of Wetland International. Jane, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, and a very warm welcome from myself, Jane Medwick, CEO of Wetlands International. I have been honoured to be part of the steering group for Partners for Resilience since the very beginning, and I'm speaking on their behalf today. So today is a very special day, International Disaster Risk Reduction Day, which we're joining our European Commission and UNEP colleagues and the teams of Partners for Resilience, that's Wetlands International, Netherlands Red Cross, CARE and CordAid, who together with all their local partners worked really hard over the last 3 or 4 years on the upscaling Eco-DRR program with wonderful results, as you will see shortly. But it's becoming clearer and clearer to everyone that when ecosystems like wetlands are lost and degraded, it's the poorest and most vulnerable people who are suffering the most. from the devastating storms, fires, floods, and droughts. But the reverse is also true, that by better managing and restoring ecosystems, we can save lives and restore livelihoods. And that's exactly why PFR partners worked together over the last 12.5 years to build the resilience of local communities alongside better managing and restoring ecosystems, buffering the impacts of climate change. So International Disaster Risk Reduction Day is of growing significance around the world, not least because disasters are ever more present and becoming a daily reality in some parts of the world. As Partners for Resilience, we work together with communities to enable them to make a change with knowledge, tools, and finance to make the landscapes where they live and on which they depend more resilient, and then to upscale that. This requires an integrated approach that connects recovery of ecosystems with other measures for climate change adaptation and for disaster risk reduction, for example, like early warning systems. There is so much we can do, and so much has been demonstrated. There's some excellent results to share, to replicate, and to upscale. So please do enjoy the inspiring videos and stories from the field that these partnerships are sharing. We're committed to continue as a partnership, working with all of our colleagues and allies and partners around the world in different landscapes to bring all this work to fruition. And I'd like to thank UNEP and the European Commission for the good collaboration during the Upscaling Eco-DRR programme. And we look forward to future engagements together to consolidate and build on this work, because for sure, this should just be the beginning and not the end of a programme. There's so much more to be done. I wish you a good and inspiring webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jen. The last remark is from Andrea Alfieri, the head of Sector Climate Change, European Commission, Directorate General, International Partnership. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amril. I hope you can hear me and see me well.
Yes.
Thank you all, and on behalf of the European Union and of the European Commission in particular, I would like to welcome you to this webinar, and where I hope we will see very interesting outputs from the project that the colleagues have just mentioned. I'd like to extend, first of all, my appreciation and my personal thank you to the representatives of the United Nations Environment Programme and the members of Partners for Resilience, who have been our key implementing partners in the context of this Eco-DRR programme over the last years. So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you also for all the work and the efforts that you have put into this in the past years. As a donor, from our side, we are very interested on events like this, particularly on this important day of disaster risk reduction at international level. We're very much interested in understanding how our project had an impact on the ground, but at the same side, we are also interested in understanding how we can upscaling and replicating the outputs, the results that we have achieved elsewhere. So webinars like this for us are a very important milestone in the course of the implementation of any program that we fund. So we really look forward to the presentations, and particularly we look forward to the diversity of approaches and results that we can see across the countries where this program has been implemented, which are quite diverse in terms of challenges and needs. Personally, I'm very much interested in hearing from the colleagues from the University of Massachusetts also on the results of the cost and benefit analysis, which I think it's an important element in terms of any strategy to upscale the approaches that we have in our program, which gives us an important element of assessment of how a program can be replicated effectively and efficiently. But also we really look forward also to the launch of the communication and knowledge products, because we believe that at international level we need to enhance the communication and the awareness of on the importance of the topic, and on the fact that climate is exacerbating a frequency and severity of disasters worldwide. Let me say, from the perspective of the European Union, indeed, the topics of ecosystem-based DRR and nature-based solutions have taken in the past years greater and greater importance since the adoption of the European Green Deal in 2019, which is the new EU growth strategy to become climate neutral and climate resilient by 2050. The Green Deal introduced a strong focus on nature-based solutions, which has also reverberated in our external action and in our external cooperation. We believe that they can be a cost-effective solution that can contribute to multiple targets in the realms of mitigation, adaptation, and disaster risk reduction. And in particular, we believe that they can be implemented with a strong focus on locally led solutions and strategies, which is something to which we attach great importance. If you look at the legislative package that the Union has produced in the context of the Green Deal, you will find plenty of reference to nature-based solutions, being in the EU climate change adaptation strategy, which for the first time has also an external and international dimension, as well in the new biodiversity strategy and farm to fork strategy, as well as on the agenda for a sustainable blue economy. It's a topic that cuts through a broad range of legislative documents from our side, and it spills also over to our external action and international cooperation. Not to forget the fact that in the past, in 2020, our president, Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, endorsed the heads of state and governments leaders pledge for nature, which has been joined by over 82 countries, and provides a very comprehensive and transformative roadmap for nature-based solutions. So this is an important element to which we continue to attach a great importance. And the Director General, where I'm personally based, the International General for International Partnership within the European Commission, has also a strong focus on climate action as a whole. I just want to remind the fact that in our new financing instruments over the next 7 years, the NDCI Global Europe instrument, we set ourselves a target of 30% of our budget to be directed towards climate expenditure, which was even increased by our president with an additional 4 billion last year, bringing the total of our commitment until 2027 to almost 28 billion euros. We do believe that we will be able to maintain a good balance between mitigation and adaptation in the context of this commitment. So there will be a substantial investment from our side on topics like the ones we are discussing today. We will continue to promote the use of nature-based solutions to align and reach simultaneously key climate and environmental objectives. This is something that it's already visible in a lot of actions that are being designed and starting to be implemented at national, regional, and continental level, particularly, I would say, in relation to sectors, areas like forest, waters, coastal zone, and seascapes. These are the areas where we see a growing interest in our partner countries, and this is being reflected in the actions that we are and we will be funding over the next years. Let me also remind you that this year, in the context of the Africa-EU summit, which was held in Brussels in February 2022. We presented a broad investment package worth 150 billion just for Africa, and a broader one at the global level of 300 billion. It's the EU Global Gateway investment package, which will really drive our external cooperation in the coming years. It already includes several flagships, which may provide entry points for nature-based solutions in the future years. There are flagships initiatives ranging from adaptation and disaster risk reduction to Earth observations and climate services, transboundary water management, sustainable and resilient agri-food systems, and flagships focusing particularly on the protection of biodiversity, such as, for instance, Natura Africa. All these initiatives that I just mentioned form a core part of this EU Global Gateway investment package, and indeed has a lot of elements in common with the topics that we are discussing today. So let me conclude here. I really look forward to hear from the speakers about the outputs of this project. Let me thank you again for your attention and your presence, and I really look forward to the discussion. Thank you, Amri. Over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Now we are coming to the second session. Before diving into the case study, we will invite you to watch the global overview video of this project. Michael Fernandez, the Communication and Eco-DRR Knowledge and Network Consultant from UNEP, will present it for us. Please proceed, Michael. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Malika, and thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'm honored to be here for the official launch of our Eco-DRR Communication and Knowledge Materials on the International Day for Disaster Risk Reduction 2022. So the development of these materials are human-centered, and we really hope that our materials will inspire everyone to get involved in learning about Eco-DRR, and most importantly, the importance of Eco-DRR during these critical times. And so to kick things off with the materials, I'm happy to present to you the premiere of a global overview video.
Our world is facing unprecedented climate challenges. Many of the challenges we face can be directly linked to human activity. Nature offers multiple solutions to the various problems facing humanity today. But time is running out, and we need to act now. This is why the United Nations Environment Programme and Partners for Resilience have developed models for increasing community resilience in different landscapes to address different types of hazards in 5 countries: Uganda, India, Indonesia, Haiti, and Ethiopia. Each country project has focused on 3 elements: ecosystem restoration and protection, disaster risk reduction, and climate-smart livelihoods. This is what we refer to as ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction, or Eco-DRR. Each project has taken on a slightly different shape and form in adapting the 3 elements to better fit their local context and needs. In Uganda, the project focused on microcatchment models to address flooding and drought. In Haiti, the project enabled communities and humanitarian actors to address landslides and flooding. In Indonesia, the project focused on peatland management for fire management through a biorights approach. In India, the project focused on wetlands and water management for reducing flooding and drought. In Ethiopia, the project focused on water and rangeland management for addressing drought and food insecurity. Although the projects each took a different approach, they achieved common targets: benefiting women and men to become more resilient, restoring or protecting ecosystems, and training community-based organizations so that they can continue to implement Eco-DRR with communities. and the benefits have considerably outweighed the project costs. These figures include direct benefits such as carbon sequestration, avoided losses to property and livelihoods, economic and health benefits from honey production, shea nut production, fruit trees, and much more. Our project has strived to highlight the importance of strengthening partnerships and engagement across various sectors, such as civil society, educational institutions, local and national government, in direct collaboration with the local beneficiary communities. This is fundamental for creating an enabling environment of continued advocacy and resilience. In doing so, communities, including the most vulnerable, have greater capacity to identify and address the rising risk of disasters exacerbated by environmental degradation and climate change. We all have a role to play when it comes to protecting our health, our people, and our planet. We must act now in protecting nature, as nature is our greatest ally. Protecting nature means protecting ourselves and our future generations.
Thank you, Mikhail. Now it is time to learn more about Eco-DRR and upscaling models. We need to understand the context and the overall achievement of this initiative first. This point will be explained by Vincent van Haren, Program Manager, Eco-DRR, the Netherlands Red Cross headquarters, and the project coordinator from Partner for Resilience. Vincent, your time is 2 minutes and you can start now.
Thank you, Malika. Well, as you can see in this slide, and as you have seen also in the video, we have implemented in 5 countries in cooperation with UNEP and through the partners of Resilience Consortium, being the Netherlands Red Cross, Care, Coordate, and Wetlands International. And in this slide, the context of each project is summarized in 1 sentence. And when you go through these sentences per project, you can observe that a common driver of risk has been water. So too much water or too little, and its implications on soil. And as mentioned in the video as well, 3 core elements have been used in these 5 countries: ecosystem restoration and protection, disaster risk reduction, and climate smart livelihood, with the main objective to come up with scalable models that are fit for this local situation and entry points. Today we have 5 presentations, inspiring examples to demonstrate community-based Eco-DRR, highlights, challenges, what we've learned. And before we dive into the first country, I just wanted to give you a very quick program blurb on the results. Next, please. So you can see here that we have reached so far 168,000 beneficiaries, being 135% of our target, of which 47% women. We have almost achieved 33,000 hectares of restored or protected land, being 132% of our target. And we have trained 193 community-based organizations, being also approximately 150% of our targets. So far, some boring but important numbers. And I think we will go through to India now. Malika.
Thank you, Vincent. We are inviting participants to leave questions, feedback, and comment using the chat function whether you are on the Zoom room or YouTube channel. We will select and present your question during Q&A session. Now, we are welcoming Dhruv Verma, Technical Officer, Wetland Ecology, Wetland International South Asia. He will present the case study from India. Dhruv, the floor is yours and you have 9 minutes, please.
Thank you, Malika. Greetings from India, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dhruv Verma and I work at Wetlands International South Asia. It's my pleasure to present our work on Eco-DRR in India. Can you please go to the next slide? Thank you. So to set up the context, in India, if you look at the disaster events and the loss and damage we have because of that. So a major proportion of that is related to water and climate. And very recently, if we look at some of the events in India, for example, the Kerala floods in 2018, and very recently in Bangalore and Assam, it brought to fore, these damages because of the degradation of wetlands, because we are stripping off, these natural buffers, these natural ecosystems from the landscape, and because of that, disaster risks are manifesting themselves. So with this background and the project we have in India, it aims to enhance community resilience towards water-related risks through Eco-DRR interventions, where we are focusing on wetlands and water. Next, please. One more. Yeah, thank you. Now talking about the drivers of risk. So we are working in 3 landscapes in India. Towards right, we have 2 wetland basins, and towards the left in the map, we have a dry land. So, talking about the inherent hazards we have in these landscapes are definitely floods, cyclones, extreme heat, dry spells and all. But again, if we talk about the drivers of risk, it's basically how the landscapes are transforming. Because of the LULC changes, the land use land cover changes, the hydrology is getting fragmented. Similarly, if you talk about the policies and plans we have, obviously they are sectoral and they have their own targets and mandates. But often when these policies and programs, they mention about environment, safeguarding environment, ecosystem protection, they largely, on ground, it basically means that it's about beautification of ecosystems or, lake development. So how ecologically sound it is, that's where the risk arises. Now, also, the communities, if, when we talked with communities, we also observed that rather, people still favor, the relief-centric or the relief and response packages rather than the preemptive DRR measures. And because of that, we have several risks that are emerging in these landscapes. For example, flash floods in Gujarat, water stagnation, coastal erosion in other parts of the country. Next slide, please. Yes. Now, to address these drivers of risk, first and foremost, we establish strategic partnership across different levels and also with organizations having expertise in different domains, which helped in designing, and implementing and even learning from the project. Also the strengthening of community-based institutions, through capacity building, participatory approaches, doing, assessments together. It really helped in strengthening these institutions. Fostering community-driven wetlands restoration and Eco-DRR through Convergence funding also, helped in the project. And in both our landscapes, in the wetland basins, we have, nodal wetlands, which are basically large wetlands, and they do have a pivotal role in the overall landscape dynamics. And for that, we endeavored, to have integrated plans, which are basically administrative documents, and to get these solutions incorporated into the Eco-DRR, which means like disaster and other developmental planning. Next slide, please. Now, talking about the results, we have results in 3 different, let's say, packages. Number 1 is about field implementation, where we worked with communities directly. We worked in 17 panchayats. We were able to protect and restore nearly 3,300 of hectares of wetlands, and also those resources which are managed by communities like village ponds and so on. And in terms of capacity building, it's basically about engaging with the community-based organizations, NGOs, the groups and all, to build their capacities on ecosystem management, DRR, adaptation to climate change, smart livelihoods, and so on. Now, talking about the policy support, we worked with national and state government agencies, who are into knowledge development and dissemination, or who are into regulating things. So with them, we developed several management plans, guidance documents, workshops, and so on. Next slide, please. So sharing a few highlights. So within the duration of the project, both our wetlands, which is Kabartal in Bihar, which is a floodplain wetland. The other one is Tampara Lake, which is near coast. So both of these wetlands got the recognized as wetlands of international importance, which means Ramsar sites. This will further push for effective conservation, management of the biodiversity and the ecosystem services. So this will be a leverage to sustain the Eco-DRR interventions we aim for. Second, next slide, please. Yes. So when we talk about cross-sectoral engagements, so wetlands, yes, they have their own plans, but we need to talk with other sectors. So in case of this, in case of India, we worked with the National Institute of Disaster Management, which is NIDM, and we held several rounds of deliberations with state level stakeholders and all. And based on that, yes, capacity building was definitely one area where we need to work, and that's why we developed. We came up with a guidebook on nature-based solutions for the disaster management professionals, and we will be following it up with all the states and provinces we have in India to use these guidelines and update their district disaster management plans. Next slide, please. Now, talking about the
Dhruv, you have another 2 minutes, please.
Okay. Yes. So now talking about the beneficiaries' perspective, here we have our women leader who's sharing like how she enjoyed her participation in the Eco-DRR activities, and how these trainings have helped other ladies also in raising their voice when they go for the annual development planning process. Next slide, please. Now, looking at the larger program or the national program where we want, or we are going for the upscaling of Eco-DRR, is number one, the disaster plans, which is the district disaster plans. Then the wetland plans, which are under the National Plan for Conservation of Aquatic Ecosystems. So within the wetland plans, we will have the disaster-related interventions, and also the GPDPs, which is the Gram Panchayat Development Plans. There, the rural employment schemes have a big say. So we are trying to get those things, more cognizant and more considerate of the Eco-DRR solutions. Next slide, please. Now, talking about the scalable features, well, I have pasted a community vision of wetlands management and Eco-DRR on the right-hand side. So if you talk about the scalable features, I think the conservation and wise use of wetlands is definitely, we need to replicate for other wetlands also. And also where we see the role of communities as a primary custodian of the conservation. And talking about the disaster risk and climate smart livelihoods, building knowledge, strengthening institutional capacities to mitigate these hazards is really important, and what we feel as a scalable feature. Next slide, please. Now, talking about the lessons learned, number one, we need to identify the champions within the communities. We need to strengthen those champions, the panchayat leaders and community-based organizations in implementing these actions. Also, very important that women's self-help group we work with, they have very catalytic role in upscaling and proliferating, let's say, the actions or the impact we have in the landscape. Partnerships, yes, with local experts and knowledge institutions really helped us in filling the gap the knowledge gap we have, and enhancing our effectiveness. And last but not the least is about the convergence with sectoral plans, as I said in the previous slides. Next slide, please. Yeah. Now the recommendation, I think wetlands or any other ecosystem, they need to be a part of the development agenda, and also while delivering the climate solutions. And I think there, yes, forests, they figure really well, but I think ecosystems like wetlands, grassland, marshes, and so on, they need to figure more prominently. So the recommendations are basically to, yes, develop convergence, have institutionalized training curricula on Eco-DRR for the practitioners of disasters in other sectors, developing a business case with good research and economic valuation so that these can be implemented, establishing a countrywide network of experts so that they can help the practitioners and other knowledge seekers in promoting Eco-DRR, and also to tap into the private sector investments where CSR and CER programs and initiatives can help in implementing Eco-DRR. So with this, next slide, please. I thank you all.
Thank you, Dhruv. The next presenter is Marion Ishiduna, former Eco-DRR manager from CARE International Uganda. Please proceed, Marion, and takes 9 minutes, please.
Thank you so much, Malaika, and very pleasure to be a part of this learning event. I'm going to be presenting to you the learnings from Uganda that were implemented together with CARE, CODAID, and Wetlands International. Next. Yes, so for Uganda, we focused on the northeastern part of the country where we're targeting the Aswa River catchment. The Aswa River is a very significant catchment area. This river flows northwards into southern Sudan and pours its water into the Nile River. So indeed, a very significant landscape there. So as a project, we targeted our work in 6 micro catchments of this landscape. And these areas, due to unpredictable rainfall patterns, were faced with prolonged droughts, especially in the upstream areas, but also flooding in the midstream and downstream areas. And as a result, indeed, it impacted especially on agricultural land use, which is done by over 80% of the communities in this landscape. And this indeed also shortened the growing seasons for the crops. It hampered crop production and also altered the nutritional security of communities in this area. But most importantly, also, this resulted into increased resource-based conflicts due to degradation of these ecosystems. As we know, the project also was faced with the challenge of the COVID-19 crisis, because at the time, this added on an additional burden in terms of drawing away time of communities to attend to patients, especially women. And so we also faced additional crises in terms of lowering household income, and therefore, again, driving communities into degrading ecosystems to be able to achieve a livelihood. In addition, we also had challenges around governance of these water resources, especially in line with poor water catchment coordination. And in this case, we are talking about the governance structures right from the grassroots, the subnational level, and the national level. So the challenge of the coordination and management of these resources within those structures was quite a challenge that brought even multiple challenges in this landscape. And last but not the least, land ownership disputes were emerging as well due to scarcity of resources in this landscape. So these are the kind of drivers of risk that we were targeting to manage as a project. Next. So what did we actually do to address these drivers of risk? So for the case of Uganda, we indeed demonstrated some models at community level, but these models were based on an assessment from a catchment perspective. So to say, we had a combination of both local models or interventions in this regard, nature-based solutions, but were based on a catchment level assessment of hazards to inform where we could demonstrate these models, for example, where we could set up apiary farming, where we could demarcate the wetlands, or where we could protect buffer zone areas. And so compounded with the bottom-up planning processes, engaging the local stakeholders and micro-catchment level to be able to identify these issues and also identify local solutions that they can use to address some of these issues. In addition to that, we also ensured to build the capacity of the coordination structures, the catchment management organizations, from the grassroots, the subnational and national, and ensuring that there is coordination among the structures in terms of addressing the risks that we spoke about in the previous slides. And most importantly, to punch more weight on our impact, we mainstreamed the experiences of the project into local government plans and budgeting processes, so that through these dialogues, our communities that were empowered in the bottom-up planning processes were able to share experiences and issues and propose solutions in those forums, in those dialogues, so that they can be able to be addressed even beyond the life of the project. And last but not the least, to a limited extent, we involved the private sector, especially in terms of developing viable ecosystem-based livelihood options, which we will refer to as eco-enterprises. Next. Yeah, so looking at our results, as Uganda, again, we'll also share our results in 3 key areas. And the first key area is on capacity building. And speaking of capacity, this was indeed targeting to build capacity in the 3 components, in integrated risk management, in ecosystem management and restoration, climate change adaptation, and climate change adaptation and ecosystem management and restoration. So in this capacity building, we targeted especially the grassroots community-based organizations, but also the governance structure, the micro-catchment management committees in all the 6 micro-catchments. And as we speak, these catchment management committees are able to develop their plans at that localized level, devise solutions at that localized level, and be able to address aspects of drought and floods at that level. But most importantly, they've been able to use these plans as tools to advocate for resources from their district local governments, but also where they have opportunity to participate at subnational and national level. And at community level, in terms of enterprising, we also strengthened the Village Saving and Loans Association, especially in times where we had double crisis when it came to COVID-19. We realized that this was a niche to strengthen the economic ability of communities to cope with disaster risks, but also with emerging risks due to COVID-19. And more strategically, we also targeted the bigger catchment management structure, where we also did not focus only on the local level, but also build capacity at the catchment, bigger catchment level structure to support the local structures. And last but not the least, in terms of the capacity, we also still focused on the district local governments in terms of being able to integrate experiences from the project into plans and budgets for these districts, especially for purposes of sustainability. The other component where we saw key results is on field implementation, where we are speaking of really building resilient communities. And so here, in terms of investing in nature-based solutions, we're able to establish beekeeping hubs, but we're also able to establish other eco-enterprises that target the shea nut tree. It's an indigenous tree in the northern part of Uganda, but that has multiple uses in terms of providing oils, but also protecting the environment. And in addition to that, in terms of building resilience, we also promoted solar-based based irrigation schemes at the local level, but also established or rehabilitated boreholes in these areas to enable multiple use of water alongside the other resilient activities. Last but not the least, in terms of the results, is a package on advocacy with governments. And for this one, indeed, this one aligns also our upscaling model, or where we see sustainability. So in terms of advocacy with government, first and foremost, we encourage the integration of the experiences on climate change adaptation in the district local government discussions around nationally determined contributions. As you know, for Uganda, we already have a climate change policy and bill. And so at the lower level, there were discussions around how do we successfully implement this. So we took advantage of those spaces to ensure that issues and experiences from the project are integrated at that level.
Marion,
Secondly,
sorry, Marion, you have 2 minutes to wrap up, please. Accelerate the presentation.
Yeah, so maybe just to wind up on the key results there is the aspect around how we are influencing the national guidelines to integrate micro catchment planning, especially to integrate the 3 components of DRR, ecosystem management and restoration, and climate change adaptation. And I'll speak to that in almost the last slides. Next. Yeah, so this is just a beneficiary perspective. This is a woman from one of the local areas involved in beekeeping, or call it apiary. One thing I can mention is that this was an activity that was predominantly male, but in terms of how we designed the activity, we try to make it as comfortable for the women also to participate in this. And looking at the design, we're able to create hubs that can promote or increase the production of the bees by integrating both irrigation within the hub to grow flowering vegetables, but also to bring protective gear that can encourage women to be a part of this. So women have testified to have contributed to their household income, but also paying school fees for their children, and so reducing household-based violence. Next. Yeah, so in terms of our upscaling model, one of the things that I can mention is that for Uganda, our focus was strengthening river catchment management. And what we did was to identify the policy gaps that render catchment management ineffective. As a country, through the Ministry of Water and Environment, the country embraced the catchment-based water resource management as an approach for water resources management, and this is anchored in the water policy. So as we were implementing the project, we identified some gaps in the approach, one of which was the weakness in the coordination of the micro-catchment structures, but secondly, the national planning guidelines for catchment management had limited focus on drought and flood management. So in terms of our upscaling, we're trying to share experiences on the project, particularly on the 3 aspects of Eco-DRR and how this can be integrated in the national planning guidelines. And in that way, then we can be able to replicate the work on Eco-DRR nationally in the different catchment areas. And so in this slide, the different components are clearly shown. Next. So the scalable features or things that someone can carry home from the model, looking at disaster risk reduction, it was really about promoting early warning systems, but blending local knowledge or indigenous knowledge with scientific knowledge. It encouraged communities to actually trust the data, but also take action based on both indigenous validation, but also scientific validation. In terms of ecosystem restoration and protection, we saw that in some landscapes, especially the dry landscapes, tree planting, for example, would not be very successful, but an approach called farmer-managed natural regeneration was more successful because we're regenerating indigenous species in those areas by restoring tree stumps or wildlings that are naturally growing in those areas. And lastly, in climate change livelihoods, we're mainly looking at, how to encourage eco-based enterprises for communities to delink from degrading the environment, particularly choosing enterprises that are linked to the environment so that communities get the incentive to continue protecting the environment. Next. So some of the lessons that we learned from implementing this project, one of them that I can share is that from the design of the project, we anticipated indeed to use the Village Saving and Loans Association method. This is a method that we're promoting really to enable communities to save small income to support them in times of disasters. But then when we were faced with double risks and the coming in of COVID-19, we realized that blending eco-based enterprises with the VSLM model even produced better results and increased communities' resilience better in such a period of double crisis. Secondly, in terms of gender integration, our target was to meet 50% beneficiary participation on the project, but the context was that it became increasingly difficult because of already existing structures that were predominantly male. So what we did and what we realized was to focus on our sphere of control, where we could focus on the micro-catchment committees that we created and ensured that the participation of women at that level was high. And so this is how we're able to achieve more participation of women, empowering them and creating spaces for engagement, especially for the women. And last but not the least, when it came to the measurement of the restored ecosystems, as you will agree with me, measuring landscape restoration is quite a challenge. And so along the way, for us to be able to determine the area for restoration and protection that we covered, it was really important that we had an extra expertise on GIS. And this system really enabled a very coordinated sharing of the polygons from the field data into a unified system that was able to display to what extent we were able to achieve the indicator on restoration and protection. Next. So in terms of recommendation, looking at the key lessons, the key challenges that we faced on the project, I'll share just 3 recommendations among others that we had. One very critical one, we realized that indeed promoting market-based approaches to restoration and protection really builds more resilience of communities, particularly targeting the entire value chain. For example, if you choose a nature-based solution such as beekeeping, approaching it from a market-based approach and targeting the entire value chain ensures that all members of the community feel belonging and can be able to restore. And as we are dealing with common pool resources, encouraging the entire community to restore or protect these ecosystems requires to ensure that you identify where each community member benefits. So if it is apiary, then you can have the youth making the beehives and doing the artisan. You can have others doing the nursery beds. And so when you target the entire value chain, then you create more incentives for more people to restore, and you realize that the landscape and the communities in there are participating. And
Marion,
secondly,
the time is almost up. Please, please accelerate. We already beyond the time frame. Please be quick.
Okay, then the 2 last ones are really in terms of linking the project efforts to existing potential government programs, like we did for the case of one of the local governments to integrate in existing government plans for purposes of sustainability. And last but not the least, establishing learning hubs within the communities themselves really encourage learning beyond the community to also other institutions, because dealing with local communities that have limited access to information, these local hubs also enable, for example, primary schools to come and learn about climate change adaptation, about ecosystem management and restoration, and be able to replicate this in their homes, but also in their schools. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening, and all the best for the rest of the webinar.
Thank you, Marion. Please welcome the next presenter from Indonesia, Eko Budi Priyanto, Wetland Restoration and Community Development Coordinator, Wetland International, Indonesia. The floor is yours, Eko, for 9 minutes, please.
Thank you, Bu Malika. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. The title of my presentation is Upscaling Community Resilience through Ecosystem Disaster Risk Reduction Project in Indonesia. Next, please. Indonesia has approximately 21 million hectares. About 39% of the world's tropical peatlands are in Indonesia. Peatlands provide enormous amounts of benefits to humans and are essential to biodiversity. However, most of the peat in degraded condition mainly due to massive development of oil palm plantations that has occurred over the last 30 years. The project takes place into villages Muara Manumpas and Terapung Raya of Soto Tapanuli district in northern Sumatra. These areas were selected because they experience frequent prolonged flooding, with fire and land subsidence due to desiccated peatlands that are prone to fires. Next. Okay, we are using the biorats approach as a kind of bonding mechanism for interest-free conditional loans, linking nature-based solution initiatives. We call them packages and increasing people's incomes. The main goal is to increase the functionality of ecosystem, which takes a long time. While waiting, community groups receive assistance to increase their income. Group members are encouraged to fulfill the entire package of agreement or at least submit a certain percentage agreed upon at outset. So, if this is achieved by 75%, the conditional loan will then be converted into a grant. Next. For key project result. For capacity building, 15 community-based organizations were established, trained, and actively engaged in the restoration through the biorat scheme, and 2 community-based fire brigade groups were established and trained to monitor and respond to peat fires. For field implementations, there is 4 canals blocking constructed, including the installation of 83 deep wells for water level monitoring, 53 hectare degraded peatlands restored by irrigated through water, and 22 early warning systems installed to alert communities of peat fire incidents. 4,550 beneficiaries were received, and 708 people from 150 households are engaged through biorat financial scheme. For advocacy, provided input to the environmental strategic assessment at the district level and advocated the integration of the Eco-DRR approach into the national training program, peatlands management without burning, which developed in coordination with the National Peatlands and Mangrove Restoration Agency. Next. We are very grateful because we can preserve our peatlands through this program. The impact on us, on our land, which is protected from fire, we can accumulate savings in the form of plants that we can harvest in the future. And from the loans, we can start small businesses at home and increase my family, says Polaria. And then it should be highlighted here that in overall activities, women is playing a key role, including in the improvement of our livelihood, but also the decision-making processes, such as a group meeting or even leading the planning and reporting sessions. Next. The approach used in the project is the integrated risk management concept. This integrates ecosystem management restoration with the climate change adaptation and disaster risk reductions. The project combined peatlands restoration activities through 3R, rewetting, revegetation, and revitalization of livelihoods with capacity strengthening and policy dialogue for disaster risk reduction in the peat ecosystem. For the community development process, an innovative financing mechanism called BioREX is applied to incentives the community groups to conduct peatland restoration and its sustainable management. Next. This is the graphical illustration, so the relationship of activities between disaster risk reduction with hydrology monitoring, ecosystem restoration through 3R approach, and climate smart livelihood through BioREX funds. Next. Some of the lessons learned during the project range from the effectiveness of BioREX approach to the engagement of the local community in the stewardship of the environment. Strong interest in the upscaling of the Eco-DRR as a way to gain multiple benefits, as well as a local community and government participation in influence policymaking. Flexibility to adjust to the changing priority on the national government is a key to successfully influence national level peatland management. Next. For recommendations, village regulations need to be drawn up by involving representatives from the local community to ensure the effectiveness of their implementation in the field. Ascertain the marketability of polyculture, agriculture, and aquaculture products by opening access market. Linking the relevant national government efforts such as peatland management without burning on Eco-DRR approach at the global level. Next. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Eco. For the participants, once again, please leave your question, feedback, and comment using the chat function, whether you are in the Zoom room or YouTube channel. And we will select your question and then present it during Q&A. Now, we are inviting Sirak Temaskem, Integrated Risk Management Delegate, the Netherlands Red Cross, Ethiopia. Sirak, over to you now for 9 minutes, please.
Thank you, Malika. We have been implementing the Eco-DRR project in Ethiopia and Somalia region. The partners are Corded, Wetland International, Netherlands Red Cross. Next. Yes, the key risk drivers we have analyzed with the community that have been really affecting the pastoral and aquapastoral communities in Somali region. One is environmental crisis. As you know, there is a research being conducted by FAO where it has indicated like 80% of the land in Ethiopia is prone to severe to moderate erosion. And the situation is even much worse in the Somali region of Ethiopia. And according to that research, 27 million hectares of land in Ethiopia has been severely degraded. So that is really a key factor driving also food insecurity in those lowland areas, which have been repeatedly affected by environmental crisis. The second driver is the climate crisis. There is also a research being conducted by IFRC and another partner, which indicated that around 20 million people are being displaced or affected by climate-induced crisis. And as it has been already mentioned earlier, the severity of drought and flooding and also the frequency have been increasing. So that becomes also another critical driver of risk in this region. The third driver of risk is the sensitivity of the livelihood of this community, pastoralist community and agro-pastoralist community. Whenever there is a small variation in the rainfall pattern, these communities have been severely affected. Even in the recent drought in Ethiopia in 2021, more than 500,000 livestock have died as a result of the drought. Next. So to address those risk drivers, at least, we have tried to see how best we can contribute in addressing those risk drivers, and we followed, actually, as the other colleague have already mentioned, we followed 3 critical strategies. The first one is community and landscape level Eco-DRR approach or measures that will include like climate smart livelihood, like promoting and supporting that, soil and water conservation measures, early warning, early actions, kind of supporting and promoting the adoption of drought-tolerant multi-purpose trees, and the distribution of seedlings that have a dual purpose for the soil and water conservation activities, as well as it also provides fodder for the animals and also fruits for the human consumption. And these all contribute to the resilience of people. The second strategy we supported under Eco-DRR project is the Csu Capacity Building. This will help us to influence the planning and implementation of sustainable Eco-DRR measures at the community level. This includes like vulnerability and capacity assessment, disaster risk management training. We have provided for various various partners, CSOs, that could support the implementation of these different measures. The last strategy, third one, we have used this capacity building of government stakeholders and also influencing some of these critical big flagship program like productive safety net program in Ethiopia. And also even within Red Cross, there are many initiatives, new initiatives that are coming up. And we try to also influence those programs. Key results, 18 community-based organizations have been capacitated. Close to 2,500 community members have been sensitized. We conducted community level and landscape level assessment. 2 natural resource management committees and 2 rangeland management committees were also established in the trend to manage the restored areas. With respect to advocacy, we shared the risk assessment results, and that result has been shared with government stakeholders. And in the districts where we have been implementing projects, we managed to incorporate some of the Eco-DRR measures tested through this project in those PSNP plans at the Woreda level. At the community level, we have benefited more than 15,000 people. We have introduced and kind of promoted this new innovative soil and water conservation measure called water spreading weeds. We constructed 4, which managed to preserve around, like restore 49 hectares of degraded land. We have also constructed 3 machinery check dams that will also restored quite a good number of degraded areas. We have also rehabilitated 4 water harvesting underground birkas, is a kind of tanker to store wet water, the rainwater the communities are getting during the rainy season. We have also established multi-purpose nursery sites, which we could be able to distribute 79,000 multi-purpose tree seedlings, which help us to restore also around 16 hectares of land. Next.
Chirag, you have 3 minutes. Please try to catch up a little bit with the time.
Yes, as I indicated, many people have been displaced by the degradation, and the relative of this person, Muhammad Dahir Usman, has already been relocated, displaced, because the land has not been productive anymore. And we supported the construction of water spreading weir, and he was expressing here his feeling and happiness and hope that he's going to stay on his land now because the land is restored. Next. Yes, our scale-up model is actually addressing multiple risks using innovative soil and water conservation, and also rangeland management, community participation, and stakeholders capacity building, and influencing, of course, big program like productive safety net program in Ethiopia. Next. The scalable features which you have been really promoting and supported being adopted by different programs. The first one is ecosystem restoration and protection measures, especially the water spreading weirs, the rangeland management, so that people could really adopt those measures. The second one is disaster risk reduction. We have been supporting seasonal weather conferences where the seasonal forecasts are being shared and advisories also being shared. That will be disseminated through the extension agent on the ground. The last one is to promote climate smart livelihood, where people kind of adapt their livelihood with the changing climate. Next. Lessons learned. I think when we start, we were thinking like to do policy advocacy to external agencies, especially government. But we have also managed to achieve quite a lot within our own organization, where after this project, we managed to design 3 projects where most of the Eco-DRR measures are being adopted or introduced in these 3 projects. We recently also, there is a federation appeal being implemented in around 9 countries, and we included some of the key measures. The other one is, as this project also gave us to see the societal challenge from landscape point of view. The next one I've already mentioned. The last one, maybe, there are tested solutions in the tools that we don't need to really reinvent the wheels, that we can already use those solutions and the tools to promote nature-based solutions. Next. We have 4 recommendations. These relevant solutions and the tools, even there are policy frameworks that can support the adoption and the promotion of Eco-DRR measures at various levels. Using modern technology for early warning, early action, like satellite imagery, we have also used some of those information to map and understand better risk at the landscape level. Climate change also affecting water resources, so we promote how water is being properly managed at the community level. And also creating linkage between ecosystem interventions and the people's livelihood. That will be a source of motivation. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you, Sirak. Our next presenter is Julia Veles Ardais, the Climate and Resilient Project Management Delegate, the Netherlands Red Cross, Haiti. Julia, please proceed. 9 minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay, Malika, thank you very much and welcome everyone. I will be presenting the case study for Haiti. Next slide, please. Yeah, the drivers of risk where the project has happened, it has been in the South Department of Haiti, which is a really high vulnerable area to disaster and strict climatic event, especially during the hurricane season. And as we have witnessed last year with the earthquake that happened during August, the population is exposed to different hazards there, especially related to water, as we have seen in other cases, and even also affected by the agricultural activities and the bad practices that population have been implementing in steep flows, burning the land. Also, this has affected the watershed are currently subjected to excessive exploitation of their wood resources. This is related to the charcoal production, which is a really beneficial income generation activity. And this region produces the 41% of the charcoal that is consumed nationally in Haiti. So even though farmers have really clear that this is has a negative impact for them on the long term, the poor rural households see themselves forced to use this quick revenue generating strategy. Next slide, please. So the strategies we have implemented from the project to address the drivers of risk is first enhancing the disaster risk management capacities, especially of the Asian Red Cross volunteers and the civil protection that are in those localities. The project has worked in 10 localities, and this has provoked also impact and replication. Strengthening the capacities of the community through this local community engagement, also sustaining, increasing and improving disasters and climate resilient livelihoods activity, and restoring the ecosystems through the nature-based solutions to prevent the disaster risk impact. Next slide, please. Yeah, the project outcomes are, as we have seen, also focused on the community resilience, the government capacities, and this community. So, yeah, and also on events like this, on promoting the results, the field implementation for resilience building has been focused on the capacity building, the field implementation, and the advocacy. And this has been through a really community engagement and capacity building approach. The Netherlands Red Cross has involved all these CBOs in 3 key aspects, which are livelihoods, tree planting, but also climate change awareness, especially for the youth and the young people through sensitizations at schools. Also on the field implementation, we have worked with these groups on cross production through land restoration and preventing soil erosion. Also with women's group for vegetable growing through their lands at home and also other community lands. And the advocacy with the government that has been engaged since the beginning with the local authority, which has been key for the community engagement in these communities, but also doing the link with the regional local authorities, which has been acknowledging our community engagement charter that aims to protect the restored lands we have been addressing during the project, and also upgrading that to a protection done by community measures. Next slide, please. Yeah, here we have one of our beneficiaries, which is Odis Eliasson, that lives in Galet and has a 5-member family that, as many others, has been suffering from food insecurity in the region. But also he has been himself been forced to use coping mechanisms like reversal, selling some of his seeds and livestock, but also reversible as charcoal production. After the project implementation, he has witnessed this positive impact in 2 terms. First of all, he is implementing now good agricultural practices and he's not anymore burning the land. So his soil fertility and the land degradation has diminished. And as he said, he has not lost the crops for this hurricane season. And he has produced 4 or 5 times more than what he used to produce as crop production or beans production. Next slide, please. Yeah, under the Eco-DRR upscaling model, we have worked on the ecosystem restoration, which will be the implemented assessment and digital map risk analysis that later has been acknowledged and integrated through the community approach. There we have selected these 10 localities and we have mobilized the groups that already were in the community participating into ecosystem restoration, and especially for seed risk management, that is key for our exit strategy. Also on climate smart livelihoods, as they have worked on crops production, introducing good agricultural practices to avoid this land erosion. Also women's for vegetable growing and apiculture, which is key for biodiversity and is a key income generation activity. And for the disaster risk reduction, we have all been involved in sensitizing the Red Cross volunteers and committees, especially the youth Red Cross committees, but also with the civil protection and the introduction of nature-based solutions, both green and gray, which has been key, for example, for this hurricane season to avoid the floods in one of our localities that was always flooded. And especially we have witnessed the results because they have sustained the earthquake and they have been a benefit for avoiding the floods. Next slide, please.
2 minutes more, Julia, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, these scalable features, as we have seen, are the involvement of the Red Cross volunteers, the nature-based solutions, we have witnessed the results. But I would like to go to the next slide so we can focus on the recommendations and lessons learned. Yeah, making the use of the local presence of the Red Cross has been key, especially for Haitian context, that sometimes we have been witnessing social protests, and especially for COVID also, it was key. And strengthening the community engagement and accountability through already collaborative and traditional ways as Convit in Haiti. And also the combination of gray and green solutions have provoked more impact within the community, but also people were more keen to listen to our solutions. Next slide, please. And as I said, Haiti has been following some unrest and some impacts of the natural disasters. So I think it's key to work with another humanitarian actors, since for this context is key also linking the humanitarian actions and the development, and also advocating on Eco-DRR model and results to national and international actors, as we have finally done through the Asian Red Cross, that is including this model in its strategy, and that will replicate it nationally with some key actions as climate change awareness and also nature-based solutions, and also influencing other relevant and environmental conservation programs and resources, and replicating this model. So thank you very much for your time and to listen to us. Over.
Thank you, Julia. Now it is time to present the questions from the audience. We have several questions here, and then I will ask this question to the presenter. The first question is addressed to Dhruv, India. The question is, have there been any local indigenous ecosystem management practices you identify common among the local? If so, were they incorporated in the project? Dhruv?
Thanks, Malika. So I think, in both the landscapes, we did our HVCA, which is the hazard vulnerability, risk assessment, and also we did the ecosystem services, assessment. And during those interactions, we came across how these people depend on the wetlands and how also they manage it. So, for example, they use, lime for improving the water quality so that they can rear fish in the farm ponds. Similarly, they use, bamboo. Bamboo-based nets and even filters to stop the influx of solid waste into the wetlands. And similarly, soil conservation work, for example, plantation of native species like Syzygium and other species, which are really good for the flora and fauna which are there in the wetlands. So I think these are some of the measures which communities they use traditionally, and they are even using in this project as well.
Thank you, Dhruv, for sharing your experience from India working with wetland ecosystem in Odisha and Bihar. Now we have another question to Uganda team, Marion. The question is, how was community enforcement by law done? Marion?
Thank you so much, Malaika. In regard to the enforcement of the community bylaw, we had a model that we're calling the community-based monitoring model. And this comprised of community members in the different villages that are adjacent to these ecosystems who were linked with the duty bearers. And so the role of the community-based monitors was to report in real time illegalities that were happening in these ecosystems. For example, encroachment, cutting of the shea nut tree for charcoal. And so we had an online system where the communities would use their phones to report to the duty bearers. And then when the duty bearers receive this information, then they respond. But beyond that, they also would have quarterly meetings with the duty bearers to hold them accountable for any moments where they were not responsive to enforcing or bringing to book people who were encroaching onto these ecosystems. So our approach was really community-based monitoring and empowering communities to hold the duty bearers or the government accountable to enforcement of the bylaws. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. It's indeed interesting approach in Uganda that engaging the local community monitor, right? We have another questions about the sustainability. This is quite important questions. The question is to Julia, Haiti. How the community will sustain after the implementation of this project? Because you work really, a lot at the community-based level. Please tell us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Malika. I think the sustainability is really from the setup and the identification of where we put the seedlings and who was working on the seedlings and managed them. We try to establish the seedlings near to water points so they can, so the watering and the increase of the seeds will be easier for them and to lower also the workforce, but also the sensitizations to these local community groups was key because we have trained them on 6 collection. So already the seeds were around and this reproduction has been done really automatically. So every time we had more trees, they started planting them. And also we have used this traditional way of planting that is just establishing one day, and some of the people from the Combit just does like a community food, and that's the only thing. So we have settled also some managers for these seedlings. We have also transferred the data to other relevant actors as local authorities, but also the Ministry of Environment and other humanitarian actors that are in the area. So if someone else also wants to develop a project with ecosystem pillar, they can contact them directly.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, indeed, we have a lot of nursery, about 10 nursery that community based in Haiti. And yeah, we ensure that it is have a strong ownership from the community. So the other questions we will ask this to Shurak. Shurak, what are the key factors to facilitate the success of the project in Ethiopia? Shurak, are you there?
Yes. Thank you, Malika. I think I could think of like one of the factors is our collaboration with various stakeholders, government and the non-government stakeholders at the local level. Especially in our case, we have been in a really good partnership with GIZ, who have been promoting also this water spreading weir as a package, and also the landscape approach. The other factor which contributes for success is a severe drought which just happened in 2021, where now the government and the stakeholders are thinking more durable, more lasting solution for the recurrent drought, which is increasing in terms of frequency and the severity in the region, unless they come up with a kind of like a different approach, sustainable approach, effective approach. We cannot keep on complaining every time drought happens and kill and destroys the livelihood of the people. So I could mention for, I think, at least those 2 critical contributing factors.
Okay, thank you, Shurak. Maybe the last question to Indonesia. Echo, maybe you can tell us, if you can do this project again, what would you do differently? Echo?
Okay, thank you. I think for the initial assessment, I will conduct a more in-depth initial study of the biophysical and social condition at the community to further finalize the program plans. I will develop the innovation, the bio-red concept more effectively applied in the community that increase the project period of the at least 5 years to further solidity the results. It will also involve school children to be able to know function and benefits of peatlands from an early age.
Thank you, Echo. We also have some comment from the participants saying that this is highly inspiring webinar for such an important day, and we hope that we continue getting support to continue and then expand this project. It is a pity to stop. And now I think we can come up to the next season that we are looking for to learn more about the economic net benefit of applying Eco-DRR approach in 4 countries. Please welcome Marta Sciarelli, Assistant Professor, Department of Economic and School of Public Policy, University, Massachusetts. And we will have a 5-minute Q&A after Marta presentation. Marta, the floor is yours and you have 10 minutes from now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Malika. I will give you a quick presentation of our cost-benefit inequity assessments of the community resilience interventions that my colleagues have just presented. Before I start, thank you very much for changing slide. Before I start, I wanted to acknowledge my large research team from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and a particular shout out to Anna Maria Georgescu, who worked with me on many of the graphics that you will see in this presentation. Next slide. So our research focus was to create an efficiency assessment and an equity assessment. An efficiency assessment is a comparison of the total cost and the current and projected benefits. And in the framework of an efficiency assessment, when the net benefits are positive, then the project is considered to be efficient. The equity assessment was necessary as a complement of the efficiency assessment, because when we assess efficiency, we do not focus on how the benefits are distributed, but it's very important to understand that aspect as well. And so we performed also an equity analysis to consider the distribution of benefits, particularly across vulnerable groups. Next slide, please. This is just a map of the locations that we analyzed in our project. And for each one of the locations, we created a project, a report investigating in details the efficiency and equity outcomes of the interventions. Thank you very much. And these are the 4 reports. In each one of the reports, you will find more details about the methodology that I'm about to explain and very detailed results. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to dive into the methodology now, and then I will discuss about the outcomes. Thank you very much for changing slide. So this is a little bit of a snapshot of our methodology. It's in 5 components. First, desk research that started in January 2020. It was just acquisition of knowledge through country materials. Followed by data collection. For the data collection, I really need to thank immensely all the country teams, all the people that have spoken so far, because they were instrumental in allowing us to collect the data necessary for the efficiency assessment. Then we proceeded with the analysis, and the analysis, as I said, incorporates both an efficiency and an equity analysis. And the last 2 components of our methodology included also creation of learning materials and transfer of the learning materials to the country teams to build capacity and to allow them to reproduce this type of analysis in the future. Next slide, please. I want to insist for a second on the analysis side. So after we collected the data and we managed to create a database of all costs and benefits associated with each intervention, we were able, as you can see on the right-hand side, to create 3 deliverables. A quantitative efficiency assessment, which is the cost benefit itself, but also a qualitative efficiency assessment. Essentially, in the cost benefit, we were able to include only costs and benefits that can be monetized. But there were a lot of costs and benefits, or better, there were a lot of benefits, not costs. The costs were all monetized, but there were a lot of benefits that we could not monetize because there was no data at the moment, because it was too early in terms of the impacts of the project, because there was not enough time to collect the data. And so we wanted to map out these benefits, and we did, creating a catalog of all the benefits that could not be monetized and not included in the cost benefit. And lastly, the 3rd deliverable is an equity assessment, where we also investigated the distribution of these benefits. Next slide, please. our analysis for efficiency and equity was framed around this resilience triangle that you have already seen in previous presentations. There are three components of the Eco-DRR resilience approach: the disaster risk reduction approach that you see at the top of the triangle, the climate smart livelihoods, which is achieved through sustainable socioeconomic development, and then on the left-hand side at the bottom, you see also ecosystem management. So we analyzed all benefits in light of these three components, and we assigned benefits to these three components. Next. Now we're going to dive a little bit into the results. It's going to be a quick summary overview of all the countries. Next. For each country, and now we're showing you an example for Haiti. For each country, the first step in creating a cost-benefit framework was to catalog list all the interventions that took place in that country. And we assigned to each one of the interventions a category of benefits based on the resilience triangle that I just showed you. You see at the bottom of this slide, there are the three different types of benefits that are the three corners of the resilience triangle: the DRR component, the ecosystem management component, and the sustainable livelihoods component. And for each one of the interventions, for example, reforestation, we determine what the benefits were. Next slide, please. And now we move into the cost-benefit analysis. We had three scenarios. We analyzed three scenarios. The baseline scenario is the scenario to which we compared scenario 1 and scenario 2. The baseline scenario is no Eco-DRR intervention. Scenario 1 is Eco-DRR intervention, but we don't include carbon capture and pollution reduction. And scenario 2 is Eco-DRR intervention, but we do include carbon capture and pollution reduction. Next slide. Maybe I'm going very fast. I'm going to slow down a little bit. We calculated the net benefits for each time periods. The net benefits are just the difference between the total benefits and the total costs. And we analyzed this over a 10 years time horizon. In order to calculate, to perform a cost-benefit analysis, we need to calculate the net present value. And to do so, we have to adopt discount rates. You should pick a discount rate for calculation of net present value. We adopted three. We calculated the analysis. We performed the analysis 3 times for robustness checks. And we performed the analysis with 3%, 7%, and a 10% discount rate. And then after performing the analysis, we compare the results for the 3 different scenarios that I mentioned in the previous slides. And what is the decision criteria? The decision criteria is to select or recommend the policy scenario with the highest present value of net benefits. Next slide, please. Here you can see at a glance the present value of the benefits in purple and the present value of the costs after 10 years at a 7% discount rate. This is scenario 1, where we don't take into account carbon capture and sequestration and pollution reduction. And what you can see is that the purple is overwhelmingly larger than the blue in some of the countries and always larger than the blue in all countries. This, as we said, is a scenario that doesn't take into account carbon capture and sequestration. Now, in the next slide, here we take into account carbon capture and sequestration. And as you can see, the difference between the green, which is the present value of benefits, and the blue, the present value of costs, the difference between the two is even bigger when you take into account this additional component. We were able to measure carbon capture and pollution reduction thanks to a program called I3 that allows us to perform these calculations. And despite the fact that the benefits are already higher, we are still not taking into account all the benefits because, for example, we didn't have data about the benefits to health and other factors. So let's move on to the next slide. So net benefits are likely to be even higher. And I would like to mention that in our cost-benefit analysis, we assumed a 2% loss in GDP per capita every year in the project area due to weather extremes. But when we looked at the historical data, it seemed that the loss in GDP per capita was actually higher, and in some cases much higher in some of the countries. So it's possible that our analyses are underestimated. But on top of that, as I mentioned, the CBA, so the cost-benefit analysis that we performed, considers only socioeconomic benefits associated with reduced GDP per capita losses and in some cases reduced property damage, only in some countries where this data was available. But we didn't include other very important benefits because of lack of data. As I mentioned before, for example, health improvements or increased agricultural productivity. So this means that the intervention could be even more beneficial to local communities than we were able to estimate from a quantitative standpoint. Next slide, please. So what did we do? We cataloged all the benefits that appeared to be emerging from the projects. This is just, I don't expect you to be able to read this slide. It's just to give you a sense of the type of cataloging that we did. So we organized all benefits that we were able to detect across the 3 dimensions of the resilience triangle. And we brainstormed and discussed with the country teams about the expected duration of each one of the benefits that we identified. And this allowed us to have a broader, more comprehensive picture of the short-term and long-term benefits of the intervention beyond the cost-benefit analysis. Thank you. Next slide. And lastly, since we said that understanding the presence of benefits doesn't tell us necessarily how they are distributed in the community, we performed an equity assessment. And this equity assessment is based on 4 pillars of analysis: inclusivity, economic equality, participation, and capacity building. And we found that in each one of the project sites, equity improved post-project because of enhancement in inclusivity or in economic equality, reduction in risk of poverty traps, enhanced participation, and increased capacity building. Next slide, please. A few words about possible limitations. If we had more time, it would have been wonderful to perform a historical analysis of the frequency and magnitude of climatic extremes in the region over at least 30 years to really capture the climatology. It would have been nice also to be able to analyze the correlation between the intensity of extremes and damages of properties, but this data was not available. And also correlation between the intensity of extremes and income losses. So this would be in a perfect world, and this is the point of view of a researcher. Something also that could make this analysis even stronger could be if monitoring was incorporated in the design of the projects, and so we would be able to monitor what happens in the future. Next slide, please. In conclusion, however, we have some very positive outcomes from this analysis. The results, in our opinion, contribute to filling the gaps about the benefits, the efficiency and equity of Eco-DRR interventions for policymakers and for donors. In our analysis, we found that the benefits of Eco-DRR interventions in the project sites always outweighed the costs. And we were also able to identify, analyze, and categorize all known, we think all because it was an immense cataloging effort, all known quantifiable benefits that also contribute to decreasing risk in significant ways in the region. Finally, we also incorporated an equity assessment, and this equity assessment indicated that the project promoted, as we mentioned, enhanced inclusivity, economic equality, participation, and capacity building. The concluding remark is that based on these findings, the Eco-DRR approach in the sites and its upscaling appears to be a profitable long-term development investment. And I would like to conclude thanking UNEP and Partners for Resilience for inviting our team from the University of Massachusetts to be part of this wonderful project. Thank you.
Thank you, Marta. Now we are entering the Q&A session for Marta. Sorry, we have several questions here, Marta, for you. The first question is, how unique is this kind of field-driven Eco-DRR cost and benefit analysis? Please give any recommendation or example on how to use this for upskilling for the governance, or upskilling or governance, sorry.
So the outcomes of our project, of this project that we did together, or the methodology that we adopted for the cost benefit?
Yeah, the result of this analysis.
I hope I'm going to be able to answer this question. I hope I understood this question. So I think it's when thinking about reproducing or developing Eco-DRR somewhere, I think it's important to start thinking about assessing the effectiveness of the project in terms of efficiency and equity from the start, incorporating in the design of the project ways to measure success. So that would be my strongest recommendation in thinking about transferring this methodology somewhere else. It would be good to collect a baseline and then perform a cost benefit at the end of the project.
Yeah, the next question would be that what would be your suggestion to the policymaker or the donor when they are interested to invest on Eco-DRR approach in their development program?
So actually, this is connected to my previous answer. I think it would be good to incorporate in the design of projects and assessment. In my opinion, the results that we got show an overwhelming positive effect of these projects. But it's very good to be able to say it and to show it with figures. And so it would be very beneficial to collect the baseline at the beginning of the project and have a final assessment at the end of the project. I should also mention that some of the benefits are going to bloom in the next few years. So it might be nice to have a follow-up. This is the mind of the researcher thinking it would be fantastic to have the full picture and in a few years do a follow-up and show how much more than we currently analyzed, how much more the local communities benefited from these projects. So this is for the donors in case they want to really assess the returns to investment.
Yeah, this is the last question, Marta. The cost and benefit are supposed to be in the same balances. If you separate the cost and benefit in different balances, and then the economic relation does not exist.
Yeah,
cost in the balance sheet of the investor and benefit in the balance sheet of the local community and or climate doesn't work. How do we explain to the investor all benefit will not flow in this balance, but somebody else balance benefit?
Yeah, this is interesting because it's connected to the concept of equity. I do think, however, that the investor takes into account the benefits to the community. It has to be an intrinsic part of choosing to invest, especially in this sector. So I do believe that they are actually in the same balance sheet, and I hope they are from a policy standpoint.
Okay, thanks, Marta. Now.
You're muted, Malika.
You're muted.
Sorry. Now we are welcoming back Michael Fernandez from UNEP to present the project communication and knowledge product and how to access them. Michael, you could start now and you have around 5-minute presentation and 5-minute Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Malika, and thank you to all the presenters and to all the participants, both on this Zoom call and also on the live stream on YouTube. So if you're curious to learn more about Eco-DRR, or if you just want to dive deeper into our Eco-DRR work or some of the things covered in this webinar, well, we have materials for you. So our team has developed a range of communication and knowledge products that is available for everyone to utilize. So these materials that we've developed are both written materials and also video materials. So in terms of the video materials itself, at the beginning of this webinar, as some of you recall, we premiered a global overview video. So basically, the global overview video aims to give a holistic view of our Eco-DRR work and why it's important. In addition to the global overview video, we also have 4 separate short films, specifically highlighting our Eco-DRR work in our program countries. So if you are interested in watching the remaining videos, all of these video content will be available and released at the end of this webinar. So stay tuned for more information. We will do our best to send out the links to as many people as we can. So speaking of which, I actually want to take this opportunity to give a big thank you to our videographer team. Some of them are on the call today, so a big thanks to all of you for all of the support and helping us to get to the stage. Now, I would like to talk about also our written materials for you to access. So this is a question that we keep seeing on the chat. So we have a whole range of written materials available for you to access. So starting with the first set is our case study written documents. So we have 5 case study written documents. The case study materials basically highlights critical components of a project, which also includes project findings, lessons learned, and even a bit of the cost benefit analysis as shown by Marta, as well as other elements. The other set of documents are our results sheets. So these are quite important because, as the name suggests, these are documents where you can actually have a look some of our achievements, more of the quantitative data and the results that we've achieved. The next set of documents we have are called our success stories. So these are 5 success stories for each country. So these are stories that are centered around our local beneficiaries. So the success story documents are very, very important because it is vital for us to hear from the local beneficiaries themselves who have been impacted by a project. And it's also an important document for us because it gives them a voice that's not often being shared. So please do check out all of our documents. They will be available at the end of this webinar. And if you have any questions or challenges accessing them, do let us know. We're happy to support. And yeah, for those of you who have phones, you can actually scan these QR codes. So one of the QR codes will take you to our films, the other one will take you to our written materials. And they will be also available on our UNEP website, and the videos will be premiered also on our PEDRR Network YouTube page. So for some of you who are on the live stream, after the live stream, you can go check them out. That's all from my side, Malika. Back to you.
Thank you, Mikhail. Maybe we have some question to you, Mikhail. Maybe can we share the communication material and product that you have presented to the other party or people?
Yeah, thank you, Malika, for that question. So yeah, we've been getting that question quite a bit on the chat. So yes, these materials are freely available. Please disseminate away. Send them to whoever you feel that needs to be sent to. And again, these are just examples. We would love to see Eco-DRR work being carried out. And if you have examples of Eco-DRR work or projects that you're doing, reach out to us. We would love to learn more. So use these resources to the best of your ability. Spread the word. If you see the videos, watch them again, share them on your networks. So let's get the word out, and it will be available after this webinar.
Yeah, Mika, maybe the last question that maybe I didn't get it clearly, but maybe you can explain to us how can we access the case study film? Because you present to us one video, we have another 4 film, right?
That's correct, Malika. So yes, all of our videos will be primarily available on the PEDRR Network YouTube page. You can see the link on the screen. You'll also share the links in the chat as well as on the YouTube pages. They will also be available on our UNEP website as well. So you can go to our Eco-DRR page and you can view all of them. So they all are available. We will also be disseminating all of the video content and whatever content we have across our partners, across our channels. So you will see them within the coming weeks. And if you do see them, make sure you share it within your network. The most important thing for us is to make sure we get the word out. People actually get to use these materials. So yes, they will be available. And if you have challenges accessing them, do send us a message and we're happy to send them to you.
Thank you, Mikhail. Now we have arrived at the end of this webinar session. And we are fortunately timely. And we thank all of you, our distinguished participant, speaker, and the presenter. Now we are inviting Muhammad Hasnain from UNEP Program Manager, to deliver the closing remark. Hasnain, over to you.
Thanks, Malika. Thank you. Actually, there's very little left for me to say, except to thank everyone. I mean, it's been a very long webinar. We are at the end of our 2 hours, and I can see that a lot of participants have already started to drop out. But we had a very overwhelming response. We had more than 1,500 people registering for this event, and over 600 people who actually participated in this webinar. I mean, through Zoom as well as our live streaming YouTube channel. More than 600 people attended this webinar. A big thank you to all of them, everyone, and thanks. Thanks to the presenters who for sharing their experiences from the field with us today, and the successes and challenges while upscaling and mainstreaming still a relatively new approach, such as ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction in each of your country contexts. We feel that, I mean, there's a lot of scope. UNEP would continue to support this stream of work, and as your cases have presented, it makes sense to the local communities in their context. And as Martha, thank you very much, have shown, it makes sense for policymakers as well. I mean, policymakers understand numbers more than anything else. So we're very happy that Martha and her team would conduct this cost-benefit analysis to show that there's actually economic gains associated with approaching nature-based solutions or ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction solutions. So a big thank you to all of you, and thanks, of course, to all the participants who raised questions and that resulted in discussions. There were lots of questions in the chat box, and our apologies. I mean, like, if we have not been able to entertain some of those questions. I mean, as we mentioned, it was already getting long, so we may not have been able to entertain some of those questions. So apologies. And yeah, I wouldn't go any further, and just like thank everyone for your overwhelming response and participation in this webinar. And yeah, I hope you all have a great day, great rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Haslin. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Andrea.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, colleagues.
Bye,
Bye.
Cecilia. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.